Today we take a look back at WrestleMania 20, where it all begins again. And the Podski starts now.
The Podski with John Baker. For over 1 year, the revolutionary force in audio entertainment.
Ooh, yeah!
Brother,
Let me talk to you! Freak out, freak out!
I just had an out-of-body experience!
Insane in the membrane!
Brother,
Yeah! And I'm here for only one reason, and that's to take it to the limit, yeah!
somebody stop the damn man!
I'm living on the edge.
Who is your daddy?
Hello and welcome to the Podski. I'm your host, Johnny Bake Show, and ringside with me we have Teddy Mongoose. Before we get Goose in here, if you haven't checked out what we've done on the show lately, this is kind of a culmination here for us on the show. It is the WrestleMania 20 show. So we did a bonus episode last week. It is the Road to WrestleMania 20. That is on all of the YouTubes. It's on all your podcasting platforms. And that is where Mongoose and I went through each TV from Rumble to WrestleMania. We took you on the full journey with everything that happened on the TVs. We did the insider stuff, everything that was happening in the dirt. And it was a ton of fun. And we've got a lot of good feedback from that show. I'm super excited about that. So if you haven't checked that out, check that out. We also have extra supplemental stuff for the show too. We also have where this run started. We have the Royal Rumble 2004, and we also have the in-between show, No Way Out 2004, where Eddie wins the World Championship. And we're going to see that championship match and talk about that later today here at WrestleMania 20. But I am super excited, Mongoose. I can't wait to talk about WrestleMania 20 with you.
Yeah, and here's what's really neat about this is that for the first time, my first show would have been last year's Royal Rumble, right?
Yes.
I jumped in on that Royal Rumble roundtable before whenever there was 37 people in here, and we were going through everything. We had the madman from the Sudan, Simba down from New Orleans talking about all of his stuff. We had the fellow that was actually at the Rumble 98.
Yeah.
You know, all those deals, like that seems like forever ago. In all reality, what do we have? 15 months or so. And what's neat about this is that we've dipped our toe into several different pools. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in following along before I hopped onto here, this is your first, sort of long-term storyline, right? That you've done on the show where you've gone months along with everything, correct?
Mm-hmm. It is.
And so what was neat about this and the bonus idea was born of that we were doing the pay-per-views, and Bake Show and I were chatting off air a little bit, and I sort of brought up to him and said, hey man, I've really enjoyed some nuggets that I've been picking up here as I've been looking at the surface level things in the Observer. What do you think about watching all the TVs? And if anybody knows anything about John, he is all about watching hours and hours of retro Raw and Smackdown. And so we sort of caught lightning in a bottle there. And to be able to continue that and then have our magnum opus here, our big main event being the end of that, I think is really, really cool. And so full disclosure, before we got on here, I did text John maybe 45 minutes ago to say, brother, I don't even have nuggets. I got chicken tenders coming. So I got all sorts of stuff to feed you. So go ahead. You set me up, and then I'll tee us off the driving range here.
Yeah, before we hop into that, be sure to check out the socials at @the_Podski on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching along here with us on YouTube, and that you download and just stay connected with us on all the socials. Is how you find out what we're doing here on the show. We're going to be doing WrestleMania 15 here coming up in a couple weeks. The last WrestleMania that was in Philadelphia. So we're going to take a look back at that because we're going to go to WrestleMania 40 this year in Philadelphia. So I am super excited for that. We got a lot of good stuff here. So as we get ready here for WrestleMania 20, we got Teddy Mongoose. He is going to set the table for us. He's going to lay out the plates and the silverware here, and then we're going to drop in nuggets and everything else that goes along with it here. So take it away, Mongoose.
We watched WrestleMania 20, March 14th, 2004, came to us live from Madison Square Garden in New York City. We had an announced attendance of over 20,000 people. I should note that Dave Daving did put in the Observer that Madison Square Garden holds less than 20,000 for a sellout regularly, and this show had a huge stage. There is confirmed over 18,000 paid, though. So we are over 18,000 paid. They announced over 20,000. I don't think that it is out of bounds to say there's 20,000 people in the building. This show did a $2.4 million gate, which, folks, we are making big deals about shows that do over $1 million and that aren't WWE stadium shows here in 2024. And this is $2,004. So just the gate alone, and I have a few business notes that I'll get to in a minute there. This show had the highest observer poll response number ever. Wow. So we had 858 thumbs up, 83.0%. We had 10.3% thumbs down, which was 107 votes. And we had 6.7% thumbs in the middle, 69 votes. Brother, we got about 1,000 poll result votes in here for the, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle, best match, worst match, etc. John, before I move on, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle.
I give us a thumbs up.
I think that you're absolutely right. Full disclosure, I did not see all of the show because I was doing the homework for the show, but I watched this live with our brother-in-arms, Justin Andretti, in Papa Mongoose's den in 2004, eating wings. Oh, yeah, baby. And the one thing that stands out about this that I will never forget, I believe this was the first $50 WWE pay-per-view.
Really? I know that this was a huge moneymaker.
Yes, and Pops was always cool, and this is what I appreciated about Pops, was that when I came of a certain age, he did turn into that guy that would buy the shows and not ask any of my friends for money. And the older that I get, I realized that it was probably just so he knew where him and his, me and my friends were on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Had he play? Had he play? But that one was a $50 show, and I remember sort of being like, ooh, man. And old fella just hit buy on Dish Network or whatever it was at the time. So we were partying. So that all being said, we had, as I noted, the most feedback ever, 83% thumbs up. And so the overwhelming percentage of the Observer readership was all about this show. Best match, 867 votes for Chris Benoit versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels, and 81 votes in second place for Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle, which props to them, man. I mean, that is almost 10% of the vote that gave it to those guys. You do want to think that was more so your, I hate to put it this way, but your sort of nerdy New Japan crowd today, that always, that does the whole trope of 20 stars in the Tokyo Dome. You got Eddie and Kurt Angle there, but it's still an excellent match. Worst match overall was actually, this one was way closer. So we had 80% of the vote essentially going to Michaels, Benoit, and Triple H. The worst match, though, was split. So 30% essentially votes for the Wilson, Sable, Keebler, and Jackie match, and 28%-ish votes for Bill Goldberg and Brock Lesnar.
Wow.
So that one got a lot of heat. Also receiving best match was Rockin' Foley versus Flair and Batista and Orton, as well as Jericho and Christian. So those four matches all got best match votes. Also receiving worst match votes, the title, Smackdown title 4-way, Cena and Big Show, Undertaker and Kane, Raw tag title 4-way, Victoria Molly Holly, and the Cruiserweight Open. So there were people that were polarized on what was the worst match on the show. People had their opinions, but we have an overwhelming, yes, that main event was awesome, which is great, man. It was this show overall is one of those that stood with me for 25 years or 20 years. 20 years. Yeah, I can count 20 years. I can still remember specific spots in the main event. And for the show, I can remember specific things happening in this show. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that doesn't always happen. I have a few notes here that I'll get to in a little bit that are just, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened 3 months before this. But that's what I have overall from our presentation from the Observer. Any thoughts or comments there, John?
No, I think I agree with everything that they said. I can't wait to kind of get into these matches. I know that you said about that things in about this show like stick in your head as you're remembering and rewatching and reading over things. For me, I think the thing that stands out the most is just the overall presentation of the show and the set. I feel like the set
Yeah.
is one of the most memorable sets that they've ever done for a WrestleMania. Like the cityscape with the LED boards. I feel like
Yeah.
this is like the first time too they ever did like the LED floor. I don't remember
Mhm.
in another WrestleMania. I really like the doorway LED board to the back, the tunnel area. I really like that too because it showed like the graphic. I really, really enjoyed that. I thought that this was an over the top presentation for an arena show.
And what's interesting about you bringing up that LED entranceway thing is that was the entranceway that I remembered. I saw WrestleMania 1, right? I watched WrestleMania 1 just a couple of years ago whenever I rewatched every Mania during shutdown. But Mania 1, I rented that VHS as a kid, and MSG felt like MSG felt like a basketball arena,
Yeah,
okay?
yes.
In 10, MSG felt like MSG because the hard cam was on the entrance.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what always stood out to me about MSG. The famous Cena comeback.
Yeah.
Where Cena, was it Mania or Rumble?
That's
Oh,
2006 or 7, I think.
yeah. I think it's
2005.
07 when you have that entranceway that just comes right to the ring.
Yes.
That was what I remembered about MSG. And I was sort of thrown off by that not being there,
Yes.
I didn't remember that. One thing that I do need to say, though, is that also set the table for future major shows because that same setup was used when me and the doctor of trigonometry went to the ROH New Japan G1 Supercard because they used that same stage setup. They
Yeah.
did have the big open stage. They did have the ramp that came down and everything. And so it was cool to see the blueprint laid out there. That was that sort of resonated with me to say, oh, this isn't the WrestleMania 10 with the X opening up. That was really, really cool. This wasn't the case. They had the video LED board, which showed who was wrestling the whole time. And for that to be on hard cam the whole time, I actually thought was really, really cool.
Yeah, I really liked it because I felt that it gave each match a different feel because you had the different graphic for each match and it just felt like each match, it gave it its own uniqueness, especially like the Undertaker and Kane one.
Right.
I really, really,
So to get back into some pre-show notes here, Dave says, after a successful WrestleMania paced by what will probably be remembered as one of the great Mania matches ever, there is no time to savor the victory because there are uncharted waters ahead. Early indications are that Mania will wind up near or above records as the biggest money pro wrestling event in history. We also set an all-time record by far for poll responses for the show. And this would be an amazing comeback. And this is why I sort of gave you a little bit of Mongoose reads here. This will be an amazing comeback from the late 2003 low point of Armageddon. And I bring this up for 3 reasons. One, we started our bonus show with me reading the main topic of the pre-Rumble Observer being the inflection point in WWE business, right?
Mhm.
So Dave's entire main story before the Rumble was business ain't good, okay? So I wanted to see why 2003 Armageddon was a low point. John, do you know what the main event of Armageddon 2003 was?
Is that the three stages of hell with, or is that 2002?
Yeah, brother. It is not the three stages of hell. Are you ready for this?
I can't even remember.
Exactly, John. The low point that Dave is referring to and the reason business is so in the toilet is the main event of Armageddon 2003, which was a Raw pay-per-view,
Yeah.
is a triple threat match between Triple H, Kane, and Goldberg.
I honestly don't remember that show at all.
So when we had that business breakdown
Yes.
of Kane being a net $300,000 loser,
Oh,
I think that is specifically tied to this show.
okay. All right.
Because I don't know if he main evented another show. I would have to look back, and I did not do that research. I'm assuming that this is his only main event of 2003.
I
And
think
that's main event, pay-per-view main event, that is.
yeah, I think so because him and Shane didn't actually main event that Unforgiven show. They were in the middle.
No, correct.
Which is one we talked about here on the Podski as well. So you can catch that one in the archives if you want to do that. It was a fun little.
Yep. So how about this? So Kane was the biggest loser because of his pay-per-view main event in the company, which was negative. Dave took a baseline of buys and then got his number of dollars based on business, either added to or subtracted from a baseline number of buys. So Kane was the main eventer with Triple H and Goldberg in that show. That show was a net loser from the previous poll. Like, overall, nobody liked it. And I wrote on here, how bad did this hurt Triple H and Goldberg's business numbers the year before? Because Goldberg was still a big draw.
He was.
And Triple H wasn't bad. So if one show took Kane down negative $330,000, how bad overall did that make Triple H and Goldberg look as draws, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that show year over year did 100,000 less buys than Armageddon 2002. The equivalent of an AEW buying pay-per-view audience did not show up to buy Armageddon 03 versus 02.
What?
That show did 1/3 less of its total audience.
I can't even. Well, it's no wonder I don't remember that show.
Yeah, you are exactly right. And so if anybody had sludged along with us from the Rumble through the bonus show to now, we just took you on a heck of a journey.
We literally did, yes.
Because that's pretty incredible, man.
That is really incredible. That really is. And this is a great point to bring up that if you've been following along or you want to go back and listen to those shows, you can. The Road to WrestleMania starts you with that week before Royal Rumble. So right after this Armageddon 03 show. And it takes you right from that point before the Rumble to exactly where we're at right now. So if you want to go back and listen to that, you can. It is in the archives. It's in the description below. Be sure to check that out if you want to. And then you can come right back here and we'll pick up and we'll take you through WrestleMania 20.
Yeah, absolutely. And this ties a really nice bow on this.
If
you talk about this being a story ender, this ties a nice bow on, hey, this is why this, oh my gosh, is business bad story was there. Because that is bad. You do 200,000 buys on a pay-per-view whenever there was only pay-per-view available at the time. And it's 100,000 less year over year. And we find out that Kane is a net $300,000 negative to your main event scene. Like all of these things, man, is just boom, boom, boom. Like I feel like, what was Owen Wilson's character in Zoolander? I feel like that right now.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to go back to some notes that I have, and I have plenty more to say about Brock Lesnar, but Brock Lesnar told management at Smackdown on 3/9 in Atlantic City that he was quitting after WrestleMania. A panic set in, even though business has been on the upswing. Keep in mind, folks, WrestleMania goes down on March 14th.
I was going to say,
So the reason,
go home. That's not the go home show. It's the week before, right?
yep. So the reason that we do not have a bunch of Brock Lesnar, hey, I'm unhappy nuggets is because it didn't make it until this edition of the Observer.
Wow.
So we did note, sprinkled in a little bit of Salt Bay, that Brock had his own travel. That was one of the things that was noted, and we'll get back to that. But he notified them on 3/9 that he'd be leaving. This made the management very upset. East Rutherford, New Jersey's Raw did 17,418 fans.
Jeez. For a Raw.
17,418 fans for a Raw.
That's the go home, isn't it? That's the one where
Yes.
they did the Mick, This Is Your Life, Mick.
Yes. And for context, AEW put on probably the best pay-per-view that I will see this year. And it involved Sting's retirement. And this is a legitimate, huge deal. This is a 30-plus year career.
Mm-hmm.
And they were over the moon at drawing over 10,000. 13,000, I think, was in the building. They had more than that for a Raw.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
They went on with this build.
Yeah, it is crazy, dude. So Dave says that because of Brock leaving, they are going to have a lottery on 3/22. All members of SmackDown will be rushed back from a 3/21 show in Glasgow, Scotland, to Detroit on 3/22 and appear on the show. So they are in Glasgow on the 21st, and they are being flown back for TV in Detroit on the 22nd.
That's got to be brutal. That had to be.
At least they go backwards time-wise, but
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. None of the SmackDown wrestlers were aware of this until they got word in Manchester, New Hampshire, that McMahon had made the announcement of Raw, and they now had to be in Detroit. I also should note that whenever Vince McMahon brought up the brand extension at an event, a press event at Planet Hollywood in New York, that he was heavily booed. I just had to state that. A couple of other things before we get into the show. People took the McMahon speech about the need to shake things up, including changing general managers, with him being unhappy with Paul Heyman, and this being the potential end of Paul Heyman, which I wrote for the first and not the last time on this thing right here, because Paul will be in and out of the good graces of Vince. This show grossed in excess of $2.4 million live, which would be the third largest live gate for a U.S. pro wrestling show in history, trailing WrestleMania X7 at the Astrodome, last year's show at Safeco Field in Seattle. The all-time record revenue for a show, total revenue, was WrestleMania X7, and that combines gate, merchandise, pay-per-view. That grossed $42.59 million in 2001 dollars. Holy cow, right?
Yes.
This being said, all of the merchandise brought to the building was sold, so the estimate is no less than $350,000. The price of the pay-per-views were increased, so Dave checked that box for me, from $39 to $49.95, and this show would need about 800,000 buys to top that record. He had 1,000 responses to his poll. And so extrapolating from 1,000 observer readers to all of the, regular fans, quote unquote, that makes sense. And he says that that's something that should easily be beaten.
Wow.
Yep. So the buy numbers, I didn't have time to look up ahead of time. I am assuming that show is near 1 million buys. I know that the biggest buy number they ever did was well over 1 million. Trump was the biggest one, and then there was the once in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime deal.
Yes.
But that's where we stood. While I'm going through this, if you can find that number, John, do it. I do need to say also the all-time live record for wrestling in Madison Square Garden was at the Survivor Series in 2002 with the first Elimination Chamber. That gate was $1.25 million. They essentially doubled that with this show. and that was only a year and a half later. I also need to say that Dave says this is the most publicized WrestleMania mainstream since Mania 14, and that show also had a $3.5 million Mike Tyson appearance fee.
I have the buy rate here for WrestleMania 20.
Give me the number.
1,020,000.
Okay, so this was officially the largest grossing pay-per-view in history then.
Wow.
Because Dave said they needed 800,000 buys to do it, and they got excess of 200,000 of that. So this is the biggest grossing show ever, and they were at Safeco Field in Seattle the year before that, man.
Yeah. A major baseball stadium back to
Yes. That's nuts. Okay. Yep. So the other thing that I need to say is he does note that, which, and sort of back myself up a little bit, they were at the Astrodome, they were at the Sky Dome, and they were at Safeco Field in back-to-back years. And they did this business in a 20,000 seat arena in Madison Square Garden. Dave says the feeling is next year's show, March 27th, 2005, will be at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, a building even smaller than MSG, but it is the second best market in the country for mainstream pub. And guess where they go, brother?
Right to Hollywood.
They do. WrestleMania goes to Hollywood.
I got it here in the notes. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Two other things that I need to note is Hall of Fame, $200 a ticket just for the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And this is $2,004.
Wow.
Yes.
Expensive.
Yes. So that actually generated an extra $365,000.
He
does note that Billy Graham, shouts to Billy Graham. That's like one of our first half viral sort of cutouts that we had here or whatever. Billy Graham was hospitalized all day in New York on 3/12 when his intestine once again started popping through his stomach. He was in great spirits. Triple H, by the way, inducted him. He does note that Bobby Heenan was the star of the show doing a comedy routine that had people rolling on the floor. He also had people crying at other times, particularly when he broke up talking about former primetime wrestling co-host Gorilla Monsoon. And folks, we should actually even throw a link to Bobby Heenan's Hall of Fame speech in the description here, because that is an all-timer, man. It is an all-timer. He also notes that Pete Rose was booed out of the building at MSG. The last thing that I have to say is, before we get started, coming off of this, because we now have a lottery coming, he notes that mass change-ups have been good short-term and not good long-term. He says the truth is there's so many champions that nobody remembers them except for the WWE and World Singles titles. It was funny because APA was on Cold Pizza plugging Mania, and they forgot who the champions were in their match. I also, where it says the truth is there's so many champions that no one remembers them, I literally have a line and an arrow, and I say Tony Khan ?
Yes.
Help us help you, brother, right?
Yep.
Major restarts that he notes: the invasion, the brand extension, the Raw restart when Austin quit, and then Flair was made an on-screen actual wrestling talent, and then when Bischoff was brought in, as well as two different WCW restarts under Vince Russo. So all of those being things that have been short-term gains, long-term losers, because by the end of it, after the bump, they actually are doing worse business than they were before. Gotcha. And here is where I'm going to turn the show over to you, John, but I needed to note this. Dave has been hitting home runs during this build-up here. He does say ideas such as the hinted breakup of Evolution do not seem all good. And Dave, I am sorry, but the breakup of Evolution ends up being the best angle the WWE does in a long, long time. And so good that it gets replicated over and over and over again.
That's a great nugget, and that's a great way to lead us in here to WrestleMania 20. This show opens up with the boys, Choir of Harlem. They are on the screen. They go through. This was a little bit of a callback back to the WrestleMania 10 Open, where they pan over the grassy fields and everything. It was a nice little callback. I really liked it. They do I wanted to note this. They do the WrestleMania package of all the previous 19 Manias. It ends with a shot of Shane and his newborn son that we did mention on the bonus show.
And he's in Indiana.
And he's in Indiana. And I popped to the moon because Shane looks like AI generated Shane here in this photo for some reason. Does not look weird. Our first match kicks off with Big Show and John Cena for the United States title. Cena comes out first and he starts rapping about Big Show. And how fitting is it for 2004 that he states he's going to beat Big Show like a penis with an STD, and that was his mic drop.
Not only that, he did also note about Big Show smuggling plums.
Yes.
And the one thing that made me laugh about that was he ripped that line, and I'm assuming he did anyways, because he is a white rapper here, from shouts out to Jimmy Pop Ali and the Bloodhound Gang from the Hooray for Boobies album that would have come out in probably about 2000. There is a song where Jimmy Pop Ali over and over says, "I'm mighty tighty whitey and I'm smuggling plums." And so that was, again, I'm thinking that John Cena, not totally a contemporary of mine, but close enough. Yeah. I'm thinking that John Cena was banging some Bloodhound Gang when he was 20 years old and thought, man, that's a good line. And he found a way to slide that in there.
Wow. I have written here that Cena is actually very over, and it was really interesting that we noted in the bonus show that Dave was weary at first of saying that Cena isn't the guy, and how the tables turn here as we get into the show, because he's way over. And it's actually, I have noted here, it's really nice to see Cena because he's not in his final form that we're used to currently seeing. He really had to chop the tree down with Big Show, and they really had to work the spot of not trying to get one but two FUs. And I really like the spot where they fake the chain throw, but he grabs the brass knucks and hits him, and then he's able to get him up for the big one, knowing about his minor MCL tear here. So I really like this match. It was a big crowning moment for Cena to get his first singles title win here. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic start to the show.
I was actually surprised at people giving this worst match votes. And I'm assuming that it was only off of the back of Big Show, right? Just people being Big Show haters at this time is what I assumed. A couple of things that I wanted to state off of that. You were right about Dave's weariness with Cena, but here's where I did want to bring up. Don't forget that Dave also did say that with his shoot casual friends, they knew John Cena. And so that is an important thing, because if he's noting that casuals know John Cena, this is a really good place, and good on you, WWE, for not like shoving this guy down our throat, quote unquote, but you give him the first match on your biggest show versus a guy that they've booked to be unstoppable, and then you put a title on him. I actually thought that was like
smart.
Meta. You know what I mean? Yeah, like that was really broad thinking and some good stuff. All right, John. So I told you that we weren't getting nuggets. We were getting chicken tenders. Are you ready?
Give us one.
The Big Show was scheduled to undergo arthroscopic knee surgery on his elbows and both knees after WrestleMania. After Lesnar left, Show recognized the situation and postponed the surgeries, which could keep him out for 2 to 3 months. So he postponed those for at least a few weeks. I have another announcement to make about somebody else that's going to be hurt, and so I will do that later. And I will say that he has postponed surgeries indefinitely. So now I feel bad, because when we talked before about when Big Show walks, it looks like it hurts.
It really does.
It hurt. It hurt.
Oh.
He needed both knees and an elbow scoped.
Man.
And these are the things that I wish that I knew whenever I was 17 or 18, so that I didn't think that these guys were scumbags.
Right. I know, right?
Do you know what I'm saying?
Same thing.
Because Show comes out there and doesn't look great. And you know what? If I needed both my knees operated on and I was 7 feet tall and genetically predisposed to be 400 pounds anyways, I would probably look like he did.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he went out there and worked, there were no rest holds.
Nope.
You know what I'm saying? Like
He
worked the match. He went up for the FU. Like all those things were great, man. And he put Cena over. I respect them having Cena beat him with that. Once Brock was gone, was the symptom of we need stars. And that actually makes more sense now.
It does. Makes a lot more
because
sense.
you need to protect show.
You do.
So Dave gives it a 1.25 stars, and I think that is a underrated match.
I think it's underrated too.
2.5 for me.
Yeah, I think that it's a 3. I'm going to give it 3 stars because I just thought it was a really good open.
Yep. Go ahead.
We head backstage with Shithead. I mean, we're talking about Coach here. So,
bro, this was something. This just him just big timing. When you're on a show with The Rock and Mick Foley and Shawn Michaels, and this was something.
So he sees Dr. Tom, Johnny the Bull, and Teddy Long, and this not long we see Teddy Long as the SmackDown GM here. He goes into Bischoff's office where we see Johnny Blaze, Johnny Nitro, Johnny Pandemonium, whichever Johnny this is, Johnny WrestleMania. So this was a weird segment because Bischoff is sending Coach to look for Undertaker, and this felt like a callback to SummerSlam 94, where we're trying to find the Undertaker. So
with Leslie Nielsen, I thought the same thing.
I did. We popped into my head. So this isn't mentioned much later in the show. I mean, there is a little bit of a segment here, but we're on the road to see if Coach finds Undertaker.
But my one note that I have here fast, this ended up going almost nowhere. I was more amazed that John Hannigan and Jackie Gator were the only 2 Tough Enough alumni to do the show. Wrestling is so filled with contradictions.
This leads us to a Randy Orton Evolution backstage segment where they're in the same spot where Orton threw Foley down the stairs the year before. They cut this long promo, and I know that you wanted to say something about this, so take the floor here before we get into this next match.
Full disclosure, I told John that I had things to say. So my thing with this was, and I did all of the reading for the prior televisions. I did not watch them at all. And so Randy starts talking. And so I'm just wanting to get to the next match so that I can review the show. So I fast forward a couple of clicks. And Randy's still talking. At least there's a clip of him throwing Mick Foley down the steps. Oh, okay, that's cool. Click, 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 click. Randy's still talking. All right, I think that I'm 3 minutes into the promo now. He says, so I spit on your face. And I'm like, oh, I get to see the spit. That's cool. Click, 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 click. Randy's still talking. And this is, dude, I felt like I fast forwarded 12 to 14 minutes of the show, and it was just Randy talking the whole time. Now, the good is that they are clipping up all of the Mick Foley, Randy Orton. This is a Mick Foley angle. I did see him punch him in the face a couple of times.
Yes.
I did see that as well. But they're clipping this up to build this match, and The Rock is a legit movie star now, and so I do understand that. But my God, I just thought to myself, I fast forwarded through what felt like a third of this show to get through this promo. So go ahead, John. You watched the promo, so give me your feedback.
It was really long, but I thought it was really good because they walked you through it, and it's not like when they cut back to Randy, he's standing in the same spot. They're giving you different angles. So they're looking at it from the doorway in the hallway. Then they're looking up the stairs. Then they're looking down the stairs. They're looking at you on the platform. Like they shift the camera angle around, and they added those cuts in there. So I felt like that was really good. That's what, if they wouldn't have done that, if they would have been static, it would have been boring as hell.
His delivery did seem fine. It just felt like it went on forever. That was, and that was my only thing. However, I did understand it. I'm not going to call it a bad promo. I didn't watch the whole thing.
Right.
But B, because of the context, I understand it. And if they were going to show all those things, especially Mick Foley getting shoot punched in the head, show it again. Like I do totally understand all that stuff.
Yes. So we go to our next match. The next match is the Raw Tag Team Title 4-Way, and this is the first of 2 Fatal 4-Way tag matches for each brand. This is the Raw one. So we have La Resistance, our favorite Playboy Boys, the Jindrak and Cade, Dudley's, and RVD and Booker T. And we talked about RVD and Booker were champs here on the bonus episode, but everything that I have here is that La Resistance sucks, and I can't stand Rob Conway. I felt like they should have just had RVD and Booker T versus the Dudleys. That's what I felt like this match should have been. I really like the one spot that I did like, though, did involve Cade and Jindrak, where they were setting up the 3D and Cade pushes Bubba Ray out of the way. I thought that was a clever little spot, but I felt like those guys didn't belong in the match. But we get a nice little creative finish with Booker T hitting the scissor kick, and then we get RVD with the frog splash. I mean, this is a good little match. It got these guys all work, but I felt like it should have been RVD and Booker versus the Dudleys.
Dave does note Dudley set up a 3D on Booker, but Cade broke it up. Booker hit an axe kick on Conway. RVD delivered the frog splash, 1.5 stars. Here's the problem with this match. I watched this whole thing. I don't remember anything about it. And I mean, I watched it.
I only remember
18 hours ago. And I didn't remember anything. all I remember was they retained. Yeah, all I remember was they retained that, and the whole time the Dudleys were coming out, I just thought about us starting every show with get up, drop the bombshell. That was all I could think about. And that probably ruined it for me. So yeah, there you go. They did note a couple of times about them getting thrown together, though, which calls back to our Flair is hurt nugget. So yeah. I thought that was interesting.
So we go backstage again with Coach. He's following these quote-unquote freakish noises. He slides a door open backstage to find Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan.
Really quick, I thought that Gene walked out of there with a head wound.
There was so much lipstick on his head.
Yes, I thought it was a head wound.
Yeah,
and I was embarrassed that they had Gene on television with a head wound.
Oh my God.
Spoiler, it was not. Go ahead, John.
Yes, and so it is lipstick. And Heenan says, and they were playing cards, and then Oakland's like, "Oh, we're playing poker." And then so they're changing up their stories. This is really good work by them. Coach wants to know what's going on behind that door, and he slides it open, and here comes Moolah and Mae Young come out. They start kissing Heenan and Okerlund. This was a whole lot of something. But I thought it was really funny that Heenan kept acting like he didn't want to go back in, but he kept pulling the door shut and acting like he was being pulled in. This was funny. It was a really funny segment.
Heenan is so funny. He's like so shoot funny.
Yes.
And if it wasn't Heenan, this would have been terrible. Dave said that's the best they could do with Heenan. My thing is Heenan is so good that he made it work.
Yes.
What I do wish is that, you know, if you could turn back time, that it would have been one of those deals where they had a situation where, you know, there was Mae Young or whatever comes out and grabs Gene, and then it ends up being one of the Foxes for Heenan.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like that I think that kind of, for comedic effect anyways, could have put it over the top, but you would have needed to be in the know to know. In 2004, a lot of people were. I didn't hate this, and it's especially because of Heenan. It didn't need to be there, but Heenan's so funny that I didn't mind it at all.
No, I totally agree about the Heenan stuff. But next we get what I feel should be up there with match of the night. And this is the Chris Jericho Christian match. This was a match that was set back because of a bet where Jericho and Christian bet $1 Canadian that Jericho was going to be the first one to bag Trish before Christian. Jericho then actually ended up falling in love with her and have feelings for her, and Christian felt like it was tearing the tag team apart. then this is where we talked about on the Road 2 show where they kept trying to kill Trish with Kane for some reason. And I don't know. I don't know about the build here. The build was okay, except for them trying to kill Trish. But one note that I have here is that they mentioned that Timmy White is the referee here, and this is the first time that we saw him from that Hell in a Cell match. But sadly, he gets injured in this match. He re-injures himself, and we never see Timmy White as a ref again. I thought there was some really great high-flying moves of each them throwing each other out of the ring. This was incredibly well-worked match, and Christian gets the win, but everything in the post-match is overshadowed by the match in the ring, I felt like, because of the angle that they shot at the end where, Trish comes out in these ridiculous boots and they do the turn on Jericho.
Dude, I give Trish credit. This is where I need to butt in fast.
Yeah.
We make fun of Josh Matthews being so 2004 dressed.
Yeah.
Trish's outfit literally translates.
It does.
I hate to say this, but like Trish could wear that. She couldn't be 50 and wear that, but you could be 25 and wear that now. And maybe not now. It's 2020, 2021 for sure. And that outfit makes sense. I actually was surprised by that.
I was too. But yeah, so they turn on Jericho, and the only thing I want to note is don't let the angle take away from the match, because the match is really, really good, and I feel like it should be up there for match of the night.
So for the Dave feedback here, he does say right away, Tim White in his second match since shoulder surgery was the ref. He was planning to ref this match for some time, but because he got hurt a few weeks ago when his shoulder popped out in his first match back, I was surprised to see him. So this obviously was the boys lobbying to get Tim White in there, which is always really cool whenever they have relationships with wrestlers. If you have not heard, go back and who interviews Mike Chioda? Is it Jericho that interviews Mike Chioda? And this is maybe 3 years ago, where he talks with Mike Chioda about the Taker and Shawn match.
Yes.
That stuff's great, man. Yeah, that's really, really good stuff. And so to hear boys having, relationships with refs, I think is really cool. Dave's notes, two things. He says that there was a Jericho slip doing a double arm suplex while on the top. He went back up and did it again. I have a pet peeve when a spot is botched. I hate to say it, but when they do it again, if you slip up and the other guy reacts, you can make it look like they didn't really miss the spot. But when you go back and do it, it usually doesn't get much of a reaction because everyone knows it's do-over, which is a good point there, but it is what it is. This match was still excellent, as John said. Post-match angle does overshadow the match itself. Dave gives it 3.5 stars in a time where stars were not easy to get. Mm-hmm. That is an easy 4+ star match today. Mm-hmm. And so I really did enjoy this one.
Yes. We move on to the Evolution versus Rock and Sock. Foley and Rock are backstage promo. Really funny moment here with Hurricane and Rosie with the Hamburglar. They showed Morocco and Snuka backstage. This match was fun. It felt a smidge long, and we noted on the bonus show about Flair's back injury and 3 numb fingers. He takes a hellacious back bump out at ringside early in the match. He does a signature top rope flip, and I didn't seem to really notice anything crazy here, but it felt like they were playing with fire. This does not end here, and Evolution wins, but Orton ends up facing Foley at Backlash, and this is the famous spot where Foley drops Orton flat on his back with the RKO counter on the thumbtacks. But I felt like this is a little bit long, and I'm surprised that a lot of people thought this was one of the matches of the night.
I remember this one live. Like this is one of the ones that I remember. I do remember Trish coming out, but that was, and then this back-to-back, my reaction to this as a 20-year-old was we went too long because of The Rock and Mick Foley.
Yes, that's why.
And I wasn't even smart yet, right? I would read certain internet websites and things, but I wasn't all the way in. And I felt then like we went too long because of these stars on purpose. That being said, you got to respect the game, right? And so if you're going to give 18 minutes to somebody, why not give it to Ric Flair, The Rock, and Mick Foley? I do understand that. I do have a couple of notes on this one. First is Ric Flair has set for different tests, and this is after Mania, to see what the neck damage he has is that he's been working with. He has numbness in the 3 middle fingers in his left hand, which Shawn just mentioned, and he can't grip well. He's been telling people over the weekend he's decided against taking time off, and will try to rehab it over the next week. I also want to note that Dave does say that the plan is for Mick Foley and Randy Orton at Backlash. He plans to stay around, he being Mick Foley, for another month. So there you go. That was already the seeds were sown, the cards were laid for that match there.
We do the Hall of Fame inductions. This is a pretty big class. We have Greg the Hammer Valentine, Don Morocco, Big John Studd, Junkyard Dog, Superstar Billy Graham, Sergeant Slaughter, Tito Santana, Harley Race, Jesse Ventura, Bobby Heenan, and Pete Rose. So that was a pretty nice little induction for all of them. We do the Playboy Bunny evening gown match. I'm going to tell you, I got nothing for that. It's a total skip job for me.
I'm here to pick you up, brother.
Yes.
So Tori Wilson and Sable beat Miss Jackie and Stacy Keibler in 2 minutes and 33 seconds of the Playboy evening gown match. The rules were changed from being a stripper match.
Oh my God.
What? To a pinfall match.
Oh my God.
But never fear, everyone but Gaeta stripped voluntarily. The wrestling in evening gown sucks, and so they wrestled in bras and panties. They pulled Gaeta's clothes off because she wasn't willing. Wilson pinned Gaeta with an O'Connor roll. That's what it was, or it was what it was. They teased a feud with Jackie and Keibler on Raw because they were mad at each other leaving. 1/4 star.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have watched it either.
Yeah. We go backstage with Eddie and Benoit. Eddie says he's proud of Chris, win or lose. There's no losing between them tonight. Eddie says that no one expects Benoit to win. Benoit says that it's his night because he believes in himself and that he's proud of Eddie. They say that they'll both be champions by the end of the night, which is a nice little teaser here for the ending. We do this Cruiserweight Open. This is basically a gauntlet style match. It's a pretty cool idea. Chavo obviously has the advantage as champion entering last. This felt a little flat. It felt like they should have gave a little more time to this. I wish they would have gave a little more time to this, but there was some really cool high spots, incredible gear by Rey Mysterio here in the Flash. And they used Chavo Sr. and Chavo gets the win here and retains. But I also have noted here that a random Shannon Moore sighting.
I have to note that Dave, a problem with Billy Kidman.
Yes, Billy Kidman really tried to kill everybody here and himself.
So Billy Kidman came out. Now, I don't know if it's because everyone's reading the papers and seeing what's going on, and I know the company isn't steroid free, but a lot of guys were a lot smaller. Kidman, on the other hand, has caught the disease.
Wow.
Caught the disease. No matter what he does, he'll always be smaller than 85% of the guys. At his normal weight and size, he's a great worker. For some reason, with the short hair and more size, he's lost whatever charisma he's had once in WCW. Woo. So, boom, boom. I mean, hot fire spit by Dave. 2.5 stars. What do you think of that score? Fair for you?
Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, 2.5 is fair here.
Okay.
We go to Lesnar versus Goldberg with Austin as a special guest ref and talk about whole thing sucked. This whole thing sucked. So I just, this thing was bad. There was way too long of pauses. It's awful. It sucked. They waited way too long in the beginning and they followed it up with holds. They tried the near falls and the big moves and the crowd shit all over them. They knew what was happening. And this thing is the worst WrestleMania match of all time.
So this is where nuggets turn to tenders, okay? I'm going to hijack the show here for a couple of minutes. I first need to say that when these guys wrestle again at 34 or whatever, it is my favorite 4-minute match of all time. And I mean that.
Agreed.
I will never see a 4-minute match that I enjoy more.
Yes.
It is like the trope of big meaty men, it's them times 1,000. It's off of Goldberg squashing Brock.
Yes.
Like they did it so right. And for once in WWE's life, they did something right later. Do you know what I mean? And so that was really cool to see. For this, however, Dave gives a star and a quarter, and I'm going to give context. So, for Brock Lesnar, we noted before that he told the company on the 3-9 Smackdown that he was out, and this show happened on 3/14. So, what I have here is Lesnar's decision to quit was based on a number of factors. As noted, while he loved the actual performing, although I bet he didn't at Mania, he hated the travel. He hated the personal issues of not seeing his baby daughter because he was gone so much, which shouts to Brock's baby daughter. She just got first place in the NCAA indoor shot put, Colorado State. We're rooting for you, little girl. Keep on keeping on. We hope you make the Olympics, girl.
Yeah.
But at this point in time, she's a little baby girl, and Brock is shook because his long-term girlfriend, which is the mother of that child, left him. Oh. So this is where this all sort of spurs from. He says that I'm young and I want to try something else, that being the NFL. And he said that on a radio show in Minneapolis. He then said, I'm not saying that I will never go back, but he would consider going back. But for now, he's walking away from the wrestling business. He had expressed concerns of wrestlers winding up crippled and seeing the plight of wrestlers that were hurt. We'll get to another one here shortly. Brock, having consistently worked through an assortment of injuries on his own time in the main roster, which was only about 20 months at this point in time. The one thing that he can be legitimately criticized for, this is Dave speaking, is only giving 5-day notice. In most jobs, you give 2 weeks. He does note, Dave does, that Brock has said that he did give 2 weeks minimum. And he told Vince 2 weeks before Mania that he'd be leaving. He was not happy about the schedule and the lifestyle as long as 6 months ago, which Dave notes that's probably around the time his relationship broke up. Brock said he was tired of being unhappy and that a lot of people in pro wrestling are unhappy. And I was not an Observer guy at this time, but I was a LordofPains.net guy at this time. And I remember reading that stuff, like sort of day by day of Brock isn't happy. Mm-hmm. And we sort of took that with a grain of salt. And then he wasn't there anymore. So obviously that was the truth, right?
Yeah.
So he notes that Brock has trained with NFL players and probably trains harder. He has better balance. His athletic ability is world class. He never played in college. He was an all-state football player his junior year in South Dakota. Did not play his senior year or did not play his full senior year because of injuries. Sportskeeda, by the way,
yes.
Screw you, Sportskeeda, for saying that he never played competitive football. You're liars.
Yes.
Because I was trying to vet some information and you're liars.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So tag Sportskeeda here. You're liars. Right. I do want to give shouts to Dave for giving props to Carlton Hasselrig, who was a University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown. I don't know why that would mean something to me, but if somebody came from there, it would. So Carlton Hasselrig was a UPJ wrestler, and he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was a Pro Bowler, was drafted in the 12th round. They had 12 rounds back then in 1989. Mm-hmm. 12th round draft pick, ended up being a Pro Bowler, left because of steroid and substance abuse issues in 1995. I do need to say that Brock Lesnar had a tryout with the Minnesota Vikings, wore number 69, and made it to the final cuts. Also, Dave notes that Brock Lesnar was hoping to make the practice squad, which would have paid him $60,000 per year. Brock had a $1 to $1.5 million downside guarantee at this time.
Jeez.
So Brock went from at least $1 million to hoping for $60K. So the you sold out chants are actually very wrong.
Not good at all.
No, really not. Part of the reason that he made the jump was he was friends with Stephen Neal, who was another NCAA wrestler. that played for the Patriots. He was a starter and then was on the injured reserve list at the time of this publication. He reached out to him to ask about what that looked like, the transition, et cetera, et cetera. Neil was a better wrestler than Lesnar. He notes that. In 2001, he tried out for the Patriots, was cut, brought into the Eagles camp, was cut again, and then the Patriots brought him back, and then he made the roster and then was eventually a starter. Brock Lesnar had, in the year 2000, talked about going out for the University of Minnesota football team, but after setting up to do so, ended up not doing it. After he graduated college, he had tryout offers from the Redskins and the Buccaneers and opted for a sure thing, which was his contract in wrestling. Also, I need to note that Brock felt he was done with amateur wrestling after winning a national championship because Brock Lesnar did not win a state championship in high school.
Wow. Okay. Interesting.
So Brock went from not winning a state championship in high school to winning a national title. He was burnt out by the amateur schedule and felt it was time to do something different. And so that's why he did not try out for the Olympic team. Dave said he would have been a long shot for the 2000 Olympic team, but nonetheless was that good that he could have been a competitor for. He was recruited by the WWF, WCW, and New Japan, which New Japan ends up getting him in the end.
Yes, they do.
And then Mike Tice.
That's a name I did not expect to hear on this show.
Mike Tice of Love Boat fame is the one that says they're not going to try Brock Lesnar out. However, guess who ends up trying Brock Lesnar out? Mike Tice, right? The initial plan is to potentially bring him in as a monster middle linebacker because of his speed and athletic ability. I had noted about the difference in salary. I do need to say that Dave notes that the daily punishment without an offseason for a pro wrestler is very hard. And then he also says this, which, John, I know you have an NFL show on this feed, so I had to say this. Lesnar did anything but sell out. He was walking away from a 7-year deal that would be worth 8 figures for him, considering his position and age, at least 8 figures. He had reportedly gotten the downside of $1 to $1.25 million. A first-year player in the NFL with no rep generally makes a $230,000 minimum, but he'd have to make the 53-man roster to earn that. He's expecting Brock, and Brock's goal was to make the $60,000 practice squad roster. And the average NFL career is 3.3 years, which is far shorter than pro wrestling. Most players start at 20 or 23. The difference of him coming in at 26 as opposed to that age is a huge deal. And so, assured of some success, like The Rock and Roddy Piper in Hollywood, and then Steve Austin, who'd already made $1 billion before, not a shoot billion, I'm being exaggerating here. Lesnar walked away from good money that he made in 20 months for basically an opportunity to do something different. And the crazy thing that is my exclamation point here is that Dave said that Brock told everybody when he was in OVW that wrestling is the greatest job in the world. And then once he started traveling and dealing with all of the stuff, that was where he changed his mind. So I am so sorry for that whole diatribe, but dude, I was so deep into this stuff. And there is more, but that's as Cliff Notes as I can make that.
That's a lot of good Lesnar stuff in there. I remember him on one of the Maddens. He did make it on a Madden. But here we go. They do announce WrestleMania 21 for Hollywood next year. They do part 2 of our tag team fatal 4-way. And this was a Smackdown one. So Too Cool, who are the champions. They face the Bashams, APA, and World's Greatest Tag Team. This felt like a really quick match, but it was pretty meh. Too Cool retains, and this felt like the dead hour of the show.
Yeah, this is the dead spot on a television show. I would never watch this, like, let alone pay for it. Like, what a mess. $1.25 deserved.
We do the Edge return vignette here. So you had mentioned Edge in the Road to show. They actually do a vignette here. And then we get into something that I did not have on my bingo card, which is kind of pertinent to how we're recording today. Jesse Ventura comes down and does a ringside interview with Donald Trump and basically asks if he will get backing for the presidential race. And I couldn't believe my eyes watching this, but Jesse screaming, "We need to get a wrestler in the White House," popped me to the moon.
Well, John, this is how you know that we live either in a simulation or the world's a stage. It's one of the two things are true. So,
Yeah.
like, I hate to say it, but if we have this being stated with these two guys, okay, A, Trump ends up in the White House, and B, Florio is out here spouting off, "Oh my gosh, can you believe that Robert Kennedy Jr. would ask Jesse Ventura to be his vice president?" Yes, I can, Florio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we just had Donald Trump in a White House.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about, brah? So, yeah, like literally A, it's a simulation, or B, the world's a stage, or C, all of the above. I don't know, but whatever, dude.
We do the Victoria versus Molly Holly match. This is the hair versus title match. This was actually pitched by Molly to get the women's title on the show. She literally put her hair on the line. She went to Vince and told her that she would cut her hair and put her hair on the line if it meant that they would be on the show. I have here Lawler is so out of pocket during this entire match. And
really quick, just because you said that, Lawler alluding only to Trish Stratus's titties whenever she walked out, I hated too. I have to say that there's this long-term storyline that was built, and it's culminating with this woman who actually is a good worker.
Yeah.
So two guys that are good workers, woman, good worker, good long-term storyline, and Lawler is just talking about breasts.
Yeah, I know.
God, dang it, that was terrible. So go ahead. I needed to note that because that irritated me too.
Yes. So they actually didn't have a bad match, but it was pretty quick. And they do Victoria gets the win. They cut Molly Holly's hair. It's the one that we see forever and ever and ever in all the packages. And it's one of the memorable WrestleMania moments. But I thought the funniest part of all of this, they're still cutting Molly's hair, and Kurt Angle's music just hits for the next match. And we go into the WWE title match, and I swore that they were going to have Kurt's pyro go off on them. Now it goes behind the stage, but I thought that they were going to get blown up by the pyro.
The irony is that the last hair match was Kurt Angle. That's where Kurt got shaved.
Yes.
And he wore the wig with the headgear.
That totally hurts here.
So I seriously wonder if that wasn't half a rib.
It might have been a rib, actually. That's a good.
There's nothing in the Observer about that, but I seriously wonder if that wasn't half a rib, because she's getting her head shaved and Kurt's hairline was, he was fighting his hairline for a little while, and they had that whole thing with him and Edge.
Yes.
With the, shampoo company or whatever in the world that or was that Edge and Booker? My God, there's some terrible storylines in early
they're not
2000s. Great. But they had the hair versus hair match with Edge and Angle lost. And that was the impetus of him shaving his head. Mm-hmm. And Angle with a wig and headgear on is
really funny.
Also great, yes. But I do wonder if them playing that while that was going on wasn't a little rib on Kurt.
But they do have this WWE Championship match with Eddie and Kurt, and this is the big run of the show with the triple main event, I like to say. This is also part of the new showcase mode in WWE 2K24. So I have here lots of mat wrestling and holds in the beginning. The match is so good. I personally have it as my best match of the night. They have such a great back and forth, a lot of high spots, and the cleverness with the finish is excellent. This match literally has it all, and it's a chef's kiss.
Yeah. 4 stars from Dave. And the finish lives in your head forever. We talk about moments that I remember literally from buying this show in 2004. Mm-hmm. We're in a run where I remember all these. I remembered the Trish finish. I remembered the Foley match. I remembered the Goldberg match. I remembered Molly Holly. And I remember the boot.
Yeah,
The boot is so good.
the boot is so great. It
It
lives
is so good.
forever. It's
It
so,
is, man. And it's one of those things where we have babyface Cena slick cheating, right?
Mhm.
And I got nuggets as to why he slick cheated later on. But he slick cheated, and that kept the Big Show strong, but it put Cena over. Here, Eddie slick cheated, and it fit the character.
Yeah,
And I really like that, man, because the thing is, it wasn't cheating either, right?
right.
It fit the character, and everything was all good. And these guys are balls to the wall, and this is a great match.
So we do Undertaker and Kane, and I have written here: does Coach ever find Undertaker? So Kane comes down to what was a great use of the stage here with the LED boards, with the buildings on fire. Paul Bear's "Oh Yeah" was sent chills up your spine. The
Really quick, if we happen to see Coach at Mania 40, which we probably won't, ask him that.
Yeah, did you find Undertaker at 20?
Did you find Undertaker? Yeah.
We should.
Yep, write that down.
The anticipation that they built to Undertaker coming out was really great. Crowd popped. It was really well done. This was a good mix of Undertaker and American Badass. Not a 5-star match, but it was everything you wanted to get the reboot on the Undertaker character.
Really fast, I do have to say for the Undertaker return, Dave not super impressed. And basically what he said was the crowd was all excited for him to come, super hot, and he was the same old guy. So
Yeah.
It's interesting that you said mix between the Dead Man and the American Badass, because that is absolutely literally what Dave just said. He notes that this is hardly a Hulk Hogan return. He calls it an unsuccessful return with staying power, like projecting staying power, essentially. He said people exploded for his entrance, saw him as the same guy, but this is not a Hulk Hogan return. He does say right after that, though, the push of Edge on his return is of prime importance. So, dude, Dave is an Edge guy here, man.
Seeds for that later in the future.
Mm-hmm.
We got the main event, the World Heavyweight Championship, the first ever triple threat for the title at a WrestleMania. We have Triple H, HBK, and Benoit. You could tell Michael, so we mentioned here on the show that Michael's had torn ACL. You can definitely tell that he's wearing the knee braces. And I did some digging, and I believe it happened in that Orton match. So if you're on YouTube right now, you can see, I believe it is his left leg that gets caught up in the ropes whenever he gets thrown over. That's where I do believe where I think it happened. This is crazy that Shawn did everything in this match that he did. The crowd was so behind Benoit. This was really
including Shawn, including a classic Shawn ear to ear blade job.
Oh my word, what a blade job. He's bleeding so bad. But the crowd was molten lava for Benoit. They got the happy ending. You know, they toss HBK out of the ring on the chin music. They come back in, they do the pedigree. It's reversed into a crossface. He almost gets to the rope. Triple H does. Then Benoit rolls him back in the middle. And Benoit is your world heavyweight champion. Eddie comes out as the confetti drops, and they have this great moment together that you saw earlier in the night in the locker room. They're both champions as they go out on the air, and it's fantastic. It's a great cap off to what I think is a really, really good WrestleMania.
Dave notes, and this is where, when we go back to Dave's thing that he had in January, when he says about the fans don't live on the internet and Vince is wrong for thinking they do.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those moments where Vince is right. And it's an anomaly because they all knew Brock was leaving.
Yeah.
If they didn't know Brock was leaving, they would have cheered the shit out of Brock. Yeah. Brock would have been the biggest baby face. He would have beaten Goldberg, which Dave notes was an original plan, clean as a sheet. And then Goldberg would have got stunned on the way out. That crowd would have been insane. Here, the live crowd was super into Benoit and booed both the other two. It was your hardcore fans that came from all over the world that live and breathe it. So they are going to be more into Benoit than the usual casual fans that you have to draw in from each city. That's why the huge reaction he got may not be indicative that he's at the Guerrero level. I thought that was interesting, like, just for him to be noting things. At the end of the match, we have finish saw Michaels go to super kick Benoit. He ducked and flipped him out of the ring, turned around. Triple H went for the pedigree, countered into a crossface. Triple H was in the move forever. Him screaming tap, the fans screaming tap. Finally, he tapped. Confetti came down from the ceiling, and Guerrero hit the ring while Benoit broke down into tears as the former maligned Vanilla Midgets, the stars of WCW, spent years saying could never headline because people wouldn't notice him at the airport, were suddenly the two major champions in the U.S. pro wrestling scene on one of the biggest shows in pro wrestling history. Between the wrestling, the atmosphere, and the announcing, this was a fantastic ending of the show. 4 3/4 star.
I can't believe it didn't get 5. It's such a good triple threat match.
And this is the time, John. You got to remember, neither Taker Michaels match got 5.
Yes,
like it's a different Dave.
It is a different Dave.
And so when you see 4 3/4 before 2015. It's a 5-star match. It is. It's a 5-star match. And this is a 5-star match. This is a great match. Oh, baby. Thank you for tossing me the ball. I do.
Here.
So the first thing is Kurt Angle, after the show, after the decision was made for the shakeup, the Superstar shakeup, the company got word that news went from bad to worse the morning after WrestleMania, where Kurt Angle called and said he was numb in his fingers once again. Angle has been keeping an injury quiet and working through big shows, so the severity is unclear. So there is tremendous concern about his future. And here's where we got chicken tenders.
Yeah.
He's coming off of 2 neck surgeries in the past year and is been told that another one could be it for him. He is taken off of the active roster.
Whoa. Okay, so I do remember that he becomes GM and stuff here in this time.
Yep. So he is taken off of the active roster here. We noted Flair and we noted Big Show's different injuries. I do need to now get into the fact that the company has Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit as its 2 main champions isn't nearly significant as the loss of its main stars. And get ready for this, brother. Benoit is likely a short-term champion, getting the belt after a few years of being one of the greatest in-ring performers ever. But it's doubtful that the Raw brand will be built around him, and he's just keeping the belt warm for Triple H's return. Wait. Guerrero, on the other hand, is pegged as a long-term champion.
Wow.
Right? Wow. Okay, wait a minute. Wait for it. So, unfortunately, SmackDown looks to be without obvious contenders. The plan was a rematch for Angle at the June SmackDown pay-per-view in Los Angeles, which is not a lock because of Angle's injury. With Lesnar gone, the next top heels would have been Big Show, who has postponed his surgery, and Chavo Guerrero. And he notes that Big Show and Eddie have not had good matches together, so there are no main event heels. JBL.
Insert JBL. Wow.
So there is no JBL plan until now. And here's the crazy thing, brother.
What a dismount to this show.
Right. And so here, Benoit is supposed to be the short term.
Yes.
Eddie is supposed to be the long term. They get that belt off of Eddie, lickety split. And Benoit ends up holding that thing until SummerSlam.
Yes. They get that. We will see that maybe later here on the show. But yes, they do get that belt lickety split off of Eddie. I don't even know how we even end the show off that. That's fantastic. What? Chicken?
Dude, I read that. That was when I texted you, as I was going back through my stuff that I had highlighted, and I was like, son,
Wow.
son. So literally their long-term plans got completely flip-flopped.
Yes.
It was going to be Benoit short, Eddie long,
And they flipped.
and then there were quote unquote no challengers for Eddie, and then Eddie, business started to go down. Of course it did. They have no stars. Goldberg, Rock, Foley, all these people leave. Eddie takes it to heart. I don't want to say they blame Eddie, but they blame Eddie, and they give it to JBL for a year-long run. And then Benoit ends up being the quote-unquote long-term champion, but he has his belt till SummerSlam.
Woo! That's insane, brother.
And so,
wow. What?
There he is, man.
What a cap off to WrestleMania 20. This has been a lot of fun. Be sure to go back, and if you haven't listened to that Road to show, go back and listen to that. We will give a little tease here that we will keep this running. There's some nuggets for you. We will keep this running into this year, so this won't be not the last time you hear of 2004 here on the Podski. So with that, we thank you for listening. We thank Teddy Mongoose for all of this work here, and we will see you next time on the Podski.